I would take this moment to hear from our new pop-in guest.
Hello. I feel like I'm an intruder, so hey, I'm trying to
You're not an
stay
intruder. You're
calm
a
and
welcome
No,
concentrate.
guest.
please feel free.
Everyone's
And
welcome. You're a welcome
and
guest.
now for the actual intelligence and the sophistication.
Yeah, we need. Hey, you know, I mean, it's been all dudes, so it's nice to have a female voice involved also. So if we can, if you have some things to say about international conflict in Lebanon, we are willing to listen.
I mean, I'm sure, and no, Ronnie said it all, but like I agree with the fact that he said that we need this kind of intervention from abroad when it comes to investigations, because we cannot do it alone. And like just when we talk about the international community and the international world looking at Lebanon, and we just hear people saying, why aren't people doing anything? Actually, people are trying to do a lot of things, and they're trying to, raise their voices and amplify the needs, but we cannot do it all alone. So I really feel like we need to have our voices amplified by the international community. And I don't know if you agree, but I really feel like this is like an urgent need for like this kind of intervention on all levels. So
how would you envision this intervention? Like, what kind of intervention would you think would be the best?
like in terms of investigations, especially for the blast, trying to move things even further, faster, because it's gonna take us ages if we're gonna do it all alone. So if you want to have this magnified scope on an intervention, I feel like it's going to be exclusively maybe on the investigations.
So like an
international, if I may,
like an international tribunal.
Yes, but something that actually targets people, and something that really pulls off this entity that's trying to take over.
So if I can jump in and share my opinion, I agree with the ideas that everyone is saying. The idea of international assistance, the right kind of international intervention. But if we're going to be, and I don't mean to be negative, I really don't, but if we're going to be, in my opinion, practical and seeing just how the international community has viewed the Middle East region, whether it's Lebanon, whether it's other parts of the region, like the history doesn't show any real goodwill or any examples of positive intervention, if you want to call it that. And so to go back into the history a little bit, I think that the reason why that is because, and we talked about this on a previous episode, is and when we say the international community, we're really talking about the West, because that is the region that's the part of the world that our region looks to for solutions, for guidance, and I think a lot of parts of the world, not just the Middle East,
because they have all the money.
Right, they have all the power, they have all the money, right, and they in a lot of ways set the region up for a lot of its problems. But I think that's the key thing, is that what is the international community's or the West's intentions towards that part of the world? And like I said before, we talked about this in a previous episode, that we look at European colonialism and we look at imperialism, and we see that now we're just living a neo form of that. And what that means: wholesale warfare, countries being destroyed, resources being extracted and stolen from these countries, and societies being torn apart. And so, in my opinion, it's it's kind of a lost cause to think that we can really get any positive intervention or any sort of positive intention from the West when it comes to our part of the world. And I think that when we look at other regions, so you guys brought up some really good examples, whether it's Bosnia, Serbia, and the Balkans, or Ireland. Yeah, I mean, these are areas that saw really intense conflict for long periods of time. But at some point, they were left alone. It's like, all right, we want to see an end to this conflict. It's gone on for too long. The people in this conflict have hurt each other enough. It doesn't suit them or the wider international community for this conflict to continue. However, and so they'll go on and they'll push for uh, and support a diplomatic and political solution. In our part of the world, conflict is the norm. Conflict is what the international community desires, whether it's for, again, the destruction of countries, the tearing apart of societies, whether it's for the sale of weapons on a large scale, whether we're talking about reconstructing countries. And you were asking, you brought up a good question about why Russia was being involved in Syria. This the other day, the Russian foreign minister said that they had tested 320 different kinds of weapons in Syria.
Yeah.
So it's a testing ground for mass destruction. And so to go on a little bit, just to talk about also what we as a people think about, like how we view ourselves and how we view the idea of resolving our problems that are in some ways imposed from the outside, in my opinion, but these systems have been pushed so that this corruption and these problems continue to fester. And these tyrants and dictators in a lot of these countries do get a lot of support from the West. Tunisia was brought up. Tunisia was that great example of, all right, one country that may have been somewhat of a success after the Arab Spring. Yet with what happened a few days ago, the West is like, all right, well, it is what it is. It's like they want to see it fail, right?
Well,
and so
I completely agree, and I'll just interject here. You want anyone with leverage. Forget the countries that have no say. Any countries with leverage in malignant ways or in beneficial ways when they want to. You want them to err on the right side of history. You don't want them to prolong problems, whether it's accepting abnormal regimes and using their leverage in the region for what they deem to be good things on their terms. That's the story of our times. Bashar al-Assad negotiating or even having a CIA liaison with that regime is a disastrous situation. Expecting Iran to do dirty work on America's behalf as well, whether that's anti-Al-Qaeda stuff, or even for that matter, using the Iranians for reasons that only serve limited American goals, that has a very huge toll on this part of the world. Add to that, at times supporting Saddam and his war against Iran, and then fighting Saddam and turning Saddam into the story. These are the things that should be that should be over with. Right now in Lebanon, there's a real fear that the Syrian regime, because it was preserved, will have leverage again in Lebanon. The Syrian regime will have influence that it lost, that Hezbollah took in its place, that the Syrians will now take back. If the Americans, for example, are to say, well, that worked for us for 15 years, that took Lebanon off our minds, it pacified the situation, we can accept that, you'll see a Lebanon that even further erodes. So that's the stuff you want to see over with. Security concerns, as opposed to championing moderates and Democrats, that really want the same things Americans or Westerners take for granted. So that's the stuff that should be incorporated. All the other things I agree with. Yeah, you don't want the bad version of imperialism. You don't want the stuff that has damaged this part of the world. And you don't want it to be only about security. Security does have there are reasons to have that on the agenda, but not when it perverts and destroys a region and makes things more insecure. And you don't want any refugees.
I think
yeah.
Like honestly, I think the type of Western intervention in the Middle East, if we're talking about Western intervention in the Middle East, what the region needs is mediation, which comes in the best form comes from like the Nordic countries, because they just really have no stake in the thing. They have no dog in the race. And they're just like, you get like Sweden and Norway to mediate, to help out, and sort of an effort to invest in the things that in rebuilding and that kind of thing. Like there's a lot of rebuilding that needs to happen, and
I agree.
You know what I mean? You're not going to get aid for rebuilding from the Gulf countries unless you ideologically align yourselves with what they want. So you need, an impartial mediator. That's what needs to happen, is impartial mediators. You don't want people that have America has way too much interest in the region, partially because the value of the dollar is tied to the price of oil. So, there's no way that America can ever be impartial. And also their strong connection to Israel, they will never be impartial in the region. So you need some impartial, China sort of dangles the idea of being ideologically impartial, but also they I don't trust them in the long run. It seems like they're playing a long game of world domination.
You want countries with leverage to do the right thing, which is a rare occurrence.
Yeah.
One selling point is this part of the world has given everyone a headache.
Yeah.
And it has changed politics for the worse in many countries that are not in the region. It has made leaders overly concerned, and even some of them waste political capital, including Macron, who showed up here the day after the blast and I think felt humiliated a month later. So you want all of these things to line up. And I agree with Khalid, the other Khalid. Nothing seems to be pointing in that direction, unfortunately.
No.
On that note, though, I actually have to get my ass ready because I have another interview, which I'm a bit late to. I should have logged in right now. Yeah, but it's okay. I have Tala messaging saying that I'm running a bit late. So I unfortunately have to end. I never do this out of principle, but at 9 o'clock I have another podcast. So
well,
I hope.
Okay, but before we leave, plug your podcast, because you have a very successful podcast going.
So it's called The Beirut Banyan, and it's at 270 episodes. Most of them are discussions surrounding particular topics, and most of them are Beirut focused, but not all of them. There are some storytelling episodes that are more they resemble better the tour that you went on, Khalid, in that it's sort of trying to share the city's history in a different way through storytelling. And I also write a weekly column for an outlet called Now Lebanon. A new piece came out today. Tala Ramadan is the hero of the moment. She's probably one of the most well-known Lebanese journalists on the scene, which is true. She's a bit embarrassed by me saying that. So I'll plug her as well.
Where does her work show up? Where would we find that?
I work at Lorient Today.
Lebanon Today?
Lorient Today.
Oh,
Lorient, okay.
It's a local publication, yeah.
All right.
And
well, we're very lucky to have you.
Thank you guys.
And
I appreciate this.
send us links to all your stuff, and we'll post it on our page, and we'll share.
We'll do.
And we should have you again soon sometime just to catch up and
I'd be
continue
honored.
the conversation.
And I promise you, next time it'll be an apartment with electricity.
I mean,
no, this was great. This was great.
Was too long to be a one-part thing. This has to be a part of a series. So,
yeah, so next
we definitely need to get you on again.
The chances of there being electricity are so small. I'll take you to the Corniche next time. It'll just be an outdoor with a little tripod.
Nice.
Thank you, guys.
Okay.
Thank you.
This
Thank
has
you
been
so
a great
much.
conversation. Thanks a lot for being on here. Both of you.
Thank you, Khaled.
You guys
Thank
have a
you.
good night.
Much love.
You too.
Have
Bye,
a good
guys.
night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, bye.